Again, become familiar with each and every question type prior to test day, so your attention and energy is spent on understanding the meaning of the words, not the question format itself. Have you signed up to E2 Test Prep yet? You should. It's a website that prepares people for IELTS. On the E2 website, you'll find video lessons that take you through all 11 reading question types and give you amazing tips on the right answers. You can sign up to E2 by going to www.e2testprep.com or clicking the link in the description below. We've helped over English exams. Tip number 2, order as the text, except for one of them. It's really important and kind of reassuring. Follow the same order as the paragraphs. That the answer to question 1 and the answer to question 2 will be located just below that in the text, and so on. Sentence completion questions, for example. Notice how the questions follow the order. Mindful that some paragraphs won't contain any answers at all. Now, the only exception to this rule is with these questions, you'll have to backtrack in the text to find the specific paragraph that relates to the image of the diagram. In other words, diagram labeling questions don't come in the same order as the text, but it's pretty obvious as to where the answers are located. Tip number 3 is to speed read the text before starting on the questions. So what should you do when you first start the reading test? Personally, the first thing I do is get an idea of what the text is about. It can be kind of disconcerting looking at all of these words and not knowing what the text is about, especially if it's an abstract topic. I highly recommend doing a speed read of the text from beginning to end, spending about 1 or maybe 2 minutes max scanning your eyes across the text, picking up the main idea of each paragraph and also noticing keywords as you go. Speed reading is not careful reading. Speed reading is zipping through a text to get the idea of it. You'll be surprised how helpful this will be for your confidence. And when you do start answering the questions, you'll find that your mind has sort of subconsciously picked up a lot of keywords and phrases
FlexJobs is the #1 job site to find remote work from home and 2000.
Hi, my name is Jay, and in this video, I'm going to give you 15 super important tips that will help you to get a higher score in IELTS reading much faster. Now, there's a lot of terrible advice out there on YouTube, so I suggest that you stick with E2 for your IELTS prep from beginning to end. We've helped over 1.5 million students just like you get the scores they need with trustworthy quality materials. So click that subscribe button for more great videos. All right, let's look at the first IELTS reading tip. The first tip is to
Good evening. Thank you all for joining. So we're going to do 2 more minutes, then we can start. I'm going to do a brief introduction of the starting to speak, which is reading. Forgive my background noise, but I think I'm audible enough. So if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Okay. 1 more minute, then we can start. Okay, so right on time. I think my background is, I don't think so people can hear it anymore. So we're going to be starting. We're going to be doing the reading module. That is what I'm going to be introducing today because reading has proven to be the most challenging, and that is what I'm going to introduce, and that is what I'm going to be giving details about before we go to the video. So we're going to be having details for reading as a module, especially for those who are aiming to achieve a band of 6.5 and above. That is around 27 points to 40 points. So, what is reading? That is our first question that is what we should be asking ourselves now. So, reading is a module that measures your ability to understand a main idea, maybe in a certain information or in a passage, or to identify opinions and attitudes that are in a specific setting, especially when it's something that is written down, or especially if it's something that you're supposed to be scrutinizing with your eyes. I hope you are together after that. So, reading helps us to develop logic and make conclusions and also make references. So, in short, when we are doing reading as a module, our main purpose or our main aim or our final goal is to recognize the writer's purpose and understand what is exactly the main idea or the main points that this writer had when giving this specific information to his passage. So we are going to be going through skills that are important for reading, especially if you're studying for your ear. And the first skill that we're going to be studying is scanning. So we have three different skills that are very important in reading. And the first one is scanning. We have the second one, which is skimming. And then you also have the paraphrasing, which are very important when you're doing a reading module. So, what is scanning? Scanning is going through the main paragraph or passage to understand the main idea and to understand exactly what the author or what the information is about. That is what we call scanning. The second skill that you should have is skimming. Skimming is you getting the main idea that is in the passage. Okay? I hope we are together up to there. Then the third one is you should be able to paraphrase. How do you paraphrase? Paraphrase is you to be able to be good in grammar, so you need to know synonyms or rather alternative words that you can use, and you have to rewrite the sentence in a different way and in a different understanding, changing the context and without changing the meaning to understand and to save time whenever you're doing this article reading. So, how many minutes does someone have for each specific paragraph or passage? In most cases, you get three passages. The first one is considered to be a simple one. The second one, simpler. The third one, kind of complicated. So, how do you manage your time, or how do you ensure that you do not get do not limit by keeping on repeating one question and focusing on one question? So the easiest way you can manage your time is by dividing each and every passage into different timelines. So the first passage you only have like 15 minutes to go through it. Answer, read and complete it. And the third one, you have 25 minutes for you to be able to go through it, to skim, to scan, and to paraphrase, and to answer and submit it. So the easiest way to conquer time is do not waste time searching one question. That is the need to know or one thing you need to do. The second thing is ensure you use the skills that you have shared, which are, I repeat, scanning, skimming, and paraphrasing. That way, you will be able to have a concept and idea on what exactly you're going to be doing on that specific passage, and you will save on your time. So in this case, if you're given a passage, you need to be able to know how you're going to utilize your time, you know how you're going to divide your time. The most important aspect is if you're given the you need to read the information that is on that passage. Read that information carefully. Like now that is what we call scanning. You're reading and highlighting the major ideas. If your brain is sharp, put it in your brain. If you're able to highlight them. That way, it is easy for you to identify the major ideas and what you think is going to be asked in that specific passage. Also, ensure you understand the major topic in this specific module. If it is a topic that is given on environment, be rest assured that every question that is going to flow is going to be specifically environment, and you need to identify anything that is environment and ensure you note it and highlight it. Paraphrase each and every sentence as you read, and just make sure as even you're doing your mock test, you're practicing to ensure your mind can hold and remember the things that you have read, so that when you go to the specific passage, you are to the specific question, sorry, you are able to answer them as fast as you can. Okay. Also improve on your grammar, identify the common words, identify the synonyms. That way, this will be really easy for you. There is no shortcut to it. The only thing you need to do is master the skills that are necessary for you. In reading, we have a types of question that can be sent in. So I'm going to give you the several types of questions that one can be asked, or rather that can be examined by the examiner for your IELTS. The first type of question is a multiple choice question, which is the most common, which is the most common one. Which is question one, whether you're given a paragraph and then you're given the ABCD, like the ones that you used to do in high school and secondary school. That is the most common one. The other one is yes, no, or rather true, false question, whereby you're given a paragraph and then you're told to identify if it's true or false, if it's a yes or no. The other one is matching question that is given. So you are maybe given a paragraph and you're told maybe to match the paragraph or rather the passage that is given to specific headings and identify the headings that meet or rather that are qualified for this specific passage. There are several other questions that I'm going to for you. So I put it down. A good student only has a notebook. Kindly, I hope you are noting down. So then I've given you the major type of questions that you expect. We also have diagram questions, whereby you're given a passage and everything is indicated, and then you're given a diagram, and maybe you are told to label. So that is also another type of question. We will be seeing it in our videos and in our tutorial. The other one is sentence completion, whereby you maybe told a story about Diana. That's specific passage, and then you're given questions, and then they ask you, uh, what is the age of Diana? You should be able to complete it because you already have the answers in the passage. Okay, then we also like have several other questions for flowchart completion, short answer questions. But as I said, the most common ones are the multiple choice, true, false, or not given. Then we also have the yes, no, or not given. So multiple choice, T, F, and G, yes, no, and not given, and not given. And maybe sentence completion or the diagram system. These are the most common. And all these can be examined at any time. So you need to be able to know how you can maneuver through it. So the true false questions, we all know how to answer them. It's just a matter of saying if you ask a question, and of course it wasn't in the passage or in that specific given. Of course, if it is false, it is false. If the idea that is being questioned is not there, of course, it needs to be there. If you have a multiple choice, the right answer, the specific one that is in that passage. This is also skills. I hope we are clear up to there. Any questions? Are we okay? Thumbs up. If we are okay, up to there. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Kennedy, I think you have a question. You can on your microphone. Kennedy?
think Kennedy was giving you a thumbs up, Diana.
Okay, okay. So I think after there we are okay. So we're going to proceed and get a few tips from a certain video that I think is already shown on my screen. Darrell is recording it for you, but if you're able to note down some notes for your own perusal, please do so. So with the few ideas I've given, let's watch the video.
Hi, my name is Jay, and in this video, I'm going to give you 15 super important tips that will help you to get a higher score in IELTS reading much faster. Now, there's a lot of terrible advice out there on YouTube, so I suggest that you stick with E2 for your IELTS prep from beginning to end. We've helped over 1.5 million students just like you get the scores they need with trustworthy quality materials. So click that subscribe button for more great videos. All right, let's look at the first IELTS reading tip. The first tip is to understand the 11 different question types. This tip is probably the most fundamental, and that is to understand the 11 different IELTS reading question types well before your test. So if you're new to IELTS, then ask. Whether you're taking the computer-delivered test or the paper-based test, you need to understand how these various questions will look on the screen or on the layout, the format, the light, especially to figure out how to. Take, for example, the paper-based match features question type. Imagine you'd never seen this question before, and it's test day. You would spend a lot of time to answer this question rather than actually reading to find the answers. Again, I'm familiar with each and every question type prior to test day, so your attention and energy is understanding the meaning of the words, not the question format itself. Have you signed up to E2 Test Prep yet? You should. It's a website that prepares people for IELTS. On the E2 website, you'll find video lessons that take you through all 11 reading question types and give you amazing tips on how to find the right answers. You can except for one of them. It's really important and kind of reassuring to understand that the question
We pioneered this technology almost 30 years ago, and we continue to drive the industry forward.
questions follow the same order as the paragraphs.
Sorry, let me say something.
Yeah, everyone. Just having a few challenges. Bear with her, please, for a few minutes. Here we go.
Don't come in the same order as the text, but it's pretty obvious as to where the answers are located. Tip number 3 is to speed read the text before starting on the questions. So what should you do when you first start the reading test? Personally, the first thing I do is get an idea of what the text is about. It can be kind of disconcerting looking at all of these words and not knowing what the text is about, especially if it's an abstract topic. I highly recommend doing a speed read of the text from beginning to end, spending about 1 or maybe 2 minutes max scanning your eyes across the text, picking up the main idea of each paragraph and also noticing keywords as you go. Speed reading is not careful reading. Speed reading is zipping through a text to get the idea of it. You'll be surprised how helpful this will be for your confidence. And when you do start answering the questions, you'll find that your mind has sort of subconsciously picked up a lot of keywords and phrases that will help you to navigate. Speaking of navigating, tip number 4 is to use keywords in the question prompt to help locate the relevant section of the text.
I'm Sean. And I'm Elliot. And we're the co-managing directors of Booty, a sustainable underwear and
One of the keys to IELTS reading success is knowing how to identify keywords in a question prompt that you can then use to locate a specific part of the text to read more carefully. Take a look at this question prompt, for example. Because caribou hair is something, it retains heat and keeps warmer for longer. What would be the best keyword to use to search the text for the answer? Which word doesn't have a synonym? If I were you, I'd use the keyword caribou as my search word. It's a distinct noun, and I should be able to look for it and find it in the text pretty easily. Which brings me to my next tip. Look for the keyword and then read for meaning. So in IELTS reading, you actually do 3 types. As I mentioned, the first type of reading you do is speed reading, where you kind of scan your eyes over the text to understand what it's about and perhaps pick up some keywords and phrases. And as I just mentioned, once you've identified a keyword in a question prompt, you then look for that keyword. It's not really reading per se, it's more like how you look for your car keys in your bedroom, but instead you're keeping the image of a word in your mind as you text, like the keyword caribou or whatever it is. Then there's the most important type of reading, careful reading. This is where you focus and understand what the words mean. So tip number 6 is read. This brings me to perhaps the most important tip of all. After you've found your keyword and the relevant section of the text, you then need to read and stop looking. I guess you could say that you need to focus, really focus, concentrate. Find the of the text itself. The answer is hidden in the meaning. I think this is the most important image I've seen to help IELTS reading candidates like you. This image is scary. It shows someone trying to answer one question. One question. Eyes moved around the page 400. They were looking for the answer. not reading for the answer. As such, they wasted time and got the answer. So when I say focus, you really need to take a deep breath, quieten word, phrase to phrase, sentence to sentence, for a complete understanding of the meaning. Again, the answer is hidden in the meaning, not the words. This is the only way to get the reading score that you want. Tip number 7. With some questions, you can use your understanding of grammar to help you determine the right answer. For some questions, such as sentence completion, knowing different word types will help you out. This question is a sentence completion question. According to the instructions, you have to use one word only from the text to complete the sentences. Look at number 6. What type of word do you need to complete the sentence? The answer is an adjective. Because caribou hair is, I don't know, brown, long, sticky, smelly, thick, whatever, it retains heat and keeps warmer for longer. If you know your English, your mind knows that you need some type of adjective to complete this gap correctly. Knowing what type of word you need can then help you when you look for that word because you know you need an adjective or a noun or a verb or whatever. This is super helpful. Another important tip is to understand synonyms and paraphrases. All right, I won't go into too much detail here because we have an entire video on this in the E2 Test Prep platform that you should watch. But you need to understand how IELTS uses synonyms and paraphrases to say the same thing using different words. For example, you might see a question that says, animal skins are effective at managing sweat via airflow because they are what? And the part of the text where you find the answer says, the animal skins used as the outer layer were also quite porous, allowing some moisture to evaporate. Let's focus on the synonymous language used here. It's important. Pay attention to the way managing sweat via airflow is mentioned in the question prompt, and then notice how the same meaning is mentioned in the text, allowing some moisture to evaporate, but in different words. Can you see how these two sentence sections say the same thing, but in different ways, using different words? IELTS reading really is all about synonymous language. It's said one way in the answer option, and then it's said another way in the text with the same meaning.
The interview question that decides everything. What AI tools do you use? If you say Chat GPT, you're done.
Stop.
Now, of course, it's not that easy because you have to avoid distractors. We also have another video all about distractors in the E2 Test Prep website as well, but in short, distractors are answer options that are very tempting, but they're wrong. If you're doing a multiple choice style question, for example, very common, you might get 4 answer options. One of the answer options will be correct. The language will be mirrored in the text using synonyms, but the other 3 answer options will be incorrect. They won't be obviously incorrect. They'll be subtly incorrect. Some keywords from each wrong answer option will be mentioned in the text. They'll all seem plausible or possible, tempting, but there'll be something about them that makes them inaccurate. It might be that they're contradictory or insufficient or something's not mentioned. You have to try your best to avoid distractors. Let's now take a closer look at a particularly troublesome task, match headings, and we'll talk about a key strategy. For some reason, probably because of bad teaching on YouTube, people find match headings really challenging. There's a super tip I want to share with you. When doing match headings, you need to read the paragraph first, and I mean read, not look, and then look at the list of headings, not the other way around. That is, don't try to match the headings with the paragraph. Go from the paragraph to the headings. And while we're notice here how the answer is found throughout the paragraph. in one particular section or sentence. Tip number 12, let's look at another challenging question type, true, false, not given, and the key challenge of differentiating between false and not given. Understanding if something is true or false is pretty straightforward. There'll be something written in the text that contradicts the statement to make it false, right? Or if it's true, it'll say the same thing but in different words. But what about false and not given? What's the difference between false and not given? Imagine the text says this: creating clothing from animal skins is very labor intensive and a highly customized process and can only be done at certain times of the year when the skins become available. And imagine that one of the true, false, not given statements says, making clothes from animal skins can be done all year round. That's clearly false. It contradicts the text, and especially the part that says can only be done at certain times of the year. Imagine that another true, false, not given statement says, animal skin clothing can be made quite quickly. Is this true, false, or not given? Well, it's not true because the text doesn't say anything about it. It doesn't cohere or correspond. So is it false or not given? Well, it doesn't contradict the text, so it can't be false. In other words, there's nothing written there about animal clothing taking a long time to make. It does say something about the clothing being labor intensive though, and herein lies the key. Labor intensive means that it takes a lot of work, but this could be done by a lot of people in a short time. The answer here would be not given. There's no information given about duration, right? If you find yourself drawing an inference when there's not enough information to draw that inference, then you're in trouble. So to recap, it's true if it says the same thing but in different words. It's false if the statement contradicts the text. And it's not given if you have to make some sort of inference and the inference isn't clear or it's just not there. Remember that if you want more practice and high quality trustworthy materials and advice, then head over to E2 Test Prep by clicking the link in the description below. We'll build your confidence and your scores. Tip number 13, remember to transfer your answers if you're taking the paper-based test. If you're taking the paper, write all of your answers onto the answer sheet during the 60 minutes of test time. You are not given additional time to write the answers on the answer sheet. I spoke to a girl recently who did her, but forgot to transfer her answers and she got 0. Eek. Tip number 14 is that the academic and general reading tests differ. If you're taking IELTS academic, then you'll be faced with 3 long academic texts taken from magazines, newspapers. If you're taking IELTS general, then you'll get 5 or 6 day-to-day English texts. The final tip is to prepare properly. Even if your English is perfect, you still want to prepare properly for your IELTS test. Statistically, reading is the second most challenging part of the test after writing. If you need help with any section of the test.com, we will help you out. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you click that subscribe button for more high quality, trustworthy videos. My name is Jay. See you later.
I hope you guys from the video that we are watching. Is there anyone with a question or anything to add? Is this something that we have in the lecture? What's the case that I was essential in bridging? Do you have any questions so far? I like interactive class. If you have a question, can you ask the question? If you have something to add, please say I have something to add to what question. Things together. Okay, so we proceed to the next part of the discussion. So in the first section, drivers, the different types of questions that you expect in your reading can be that can be examined in fields. You've also understood the different types of skills that can be used during reading. I hope you guys are okay now. I hope you are next time. So the only thing I'm going to insist on is knowing how to use similes and characteristics and knowing how to manage your time very well. That is the most crucial aspect in reading. Going to be advising about and interesting. So for you to be able to know where you range yourself and where you rate and you're doing the test, ensure at least you're getting above 6.5, that is above 27. And even if you can do better, please try and get above that. So that at least you know that when you're doing the exam, you're going to get above 3.5. So it is my advice that you keep on doing and doing more practice on the notes and also watch several videos. And as you watch the videos, don't just watch watch the videos and the notes down so that when you get the notes and you're doing the notes, you can apply them to your problem from. Yeah. Okay. So I hope I'm not supposed to repeat everything, but okay. So I hope I'm now clear. Hello, I hope you can hear me better. So I'm saying that whenever you're doing this, you need to be able to note down everything that you're studying, or rather whatever you're listening from the videos that you're going to be watching, so that you can apply the same knowledge when you're doing your notes. And remember, reading, the most crucial aspect is time. So you need to be able to utilize your time well on every section that is given, and you also need to understand each and every type of question very clearly. So your focus should be how you're going to maximize it, how you're going to give the correct answers, how you're going to be reading the paragraphs using the skills that have been shared, and how you're going to be answering the questions. So let's proceed to the next video that we're going to watch and finish our class for today so that we can at least get some more knowledge from reading.
Do is just practice and you will magically get the score that you need. Let's look at why that is wrong, because many of you watching completely disagree with that. So I want to tell you about two of my friends, Johnny and Emma. Johnny is a farmer. His dad was a farmer. He grew up on a farm. His dad had an old car. And since Johnny was like 9 years old, Johnny has been illegally driving his dad's car around his farm. And then we have Emma. Emma is my other friend, and she never touched the steering wheel of a car. She never learned how to drive until she was 18, and she got a driving instructor to tell her exactly what to do. Who do you think failed their test, and who do you think passed their test? Johnny with 10 years, a decade of driving experience, or Emma with weeks of driving experience? You've guessed it, Johnny failed multiple times and passed first time. Why was that? Even Johnny had hundreds, even thousands of hours of practice. Well, Johnny had never been to drive properly. He had been driving incorrectly, practicing the wrong thing, ingraining those bad habits for years and years and years. This is exactly the same with many, many students. They go onto YouTube, they get some tips and tricks that don't actually work. They practice, practice, practice using those tips and tricks, and their reading skills get worse, not better. The second big myth that I see, very, very common advice, is all you need are time management tips, and this is magically going to improve your score. This is completely wrong. Why? So you'll probably recognize this guy. Usain Bolt was the fastest man in the world. Remember when Usain Bolt won gold at the Olympics? The night before, did he go on to Google and Google time management tips? No. Why did he win gold? Because he was better at running than all these other guys. These other guys were bad at time management. They were worse at running. He was It's exactly the same with the IELTS reading. Of course, as I'm an English speaker, of course I should get a band 9, but I did it in 20 minutes. How did I do it in 20 minutes? Time management techniques? No, I'm just really, really good reading in English. So you don't have a time management problem. You have a and fix the problem that you have in order to improve. The third big myth that I see is skimming and scanning. When I got a new class, when I used to teach 16 students in the classroom, first question I asked at the start of the first reading class, I would say, what's the key to getting a high score? Hands would go up. It would always say skimming and scanning. And then I would give them a practice question and say, okay, just skim and scan and find the correct answer. None of them were able to do that. Why did you think that was the correct answer? Well, that's what everybody says. Well, what everybody says is not necessarily the thing that you should be doing. The average reading score worldwide is a band 6. If the common advice was correct, the average score would be much, much higher than a band 6. So many of you might disagree, so let me demonstrate this to you. I want you to imagine that we are in a helicopter and we're flying over New York. And I say to you, your task is to find McDonald's Times Square. So we're flying over Manhattan here. Here's Lower Manhattan. We have New Jersey out here. We have Queens. We have Brooklyn. We have different areas. Skimming is just getting a general idea of where you are. It is giving you a general idea of what the reading text actually means. So we're flying over here. We have a general idea that we are in the correct place. But can you see McDonald's? No, we are too far up. So skimming helps, but it doesn't help you find the correct answer. We land the helicopter. You still have the task of finding McDonald's in Times Square. Scanning, does that help you find the correct answer? Well, scanning helps you find the general location, the correct paragraph, the correct area. It doesn't actually help you find the correct answer. So if we look here, we know we're generally in Times Square. Okay, this looks like Times Square, but where's McDonald's? Scanning just tells you you're in the right area. You're getting warmer. Close reading is the skill that actually gets you the correct answer. And it's one that is very, very rarely taught in most IELTS classrooms. And if you didn't use that skill, you would just be flying around New York or flying around America, not really knowing what to do. That's what most students do on test day. They're just looking at stuff and not really knowing where the correct answer is. And most classrooms will only teach you 2 reading skills. They'll teach you skimming and they'll teach you scanning. We actually teach 5. So number 1, understand the question. Simply, if you do not understand the question type, what it is telling you, the instructions, you will never be able to answer it correctly. We do teach skimming. We do then close reading, carefully analyzing the text, carefully thinking about it, what you have found the area for, and then very, very importantly, but often overlooked, is deciding the correct answer. So you might have, okay, could be that multiple choice, for example not given, we need to logically think through and use a system for finding the correct answer. Okay, so what you might be thinking now is, you said system, you said strategy, just teach me one system and I can go in and magically get a band 9. I wish that were true. If it were true, my life would be much easier and I would give it to you. But unfortunately, or I think fortunately, there are different question types and they are testing different things. And we've step-by-step strategies for all of those different question types. I'm going to give them to you. It's actually in this ebook that you can download. You can go to the description and we give you the full ebook that has every single question and every single step-by-step strategy. We normally only give that to our VIP students, but you can get it for free today. But let's look at why this is really, really important, because some of you might download that ebook and skim through it and not really understand what you need to do. Let me explain the why you need different strategies for different question types. So I want you to imagine that we are in New York. I say to you, you're going to go to Las Vegas and I'm going to go to Seattle. Would we travel along the exact same route? Would we use the same strategy to get there? Of course not. But that's exactly what many IELTS students do. So there are different questions, different strategies, but they're all following the same route and they end up getting very, very different answers. So just like New York, Seattle, Las Vegas are very, very different places, here are 3 different question types. And I want to show you how different these are. So matching headings, what it is asking you to do with the matching headings question is understand the main ideas on the paragraph. So to look at paragraphs and understand the general meaning of each paragraph. True, false, not given, what it is testing is something completely different. It's actually the opposite. What they're testing is, can you closely read things within that paragraph and then logically analyze the different question options? And then multiple choice is careful comparison between different, also the elimination of different distractors, really focusing in on what the question is actually asking you and what the correct answer might be. 3 completely different questions requiring 3 completely different strategies. So let's look at the strategy for matching headings contained within this ebook. So what skills are being tested here? Understanding the main idea, quickly understanding the general meaning, and differentiating between 2 or more similar headings. So the common problems are, there's a lot of information to process. It takes quite a lot of time if you try and understand every single word. There are a few other little problems, but that's the main one. So let me show you a strategy that we've developed for matching headings that helps you overcome all of these problems. So what I want you to do is ignore all of this. I want you just to focus in on this paragraph, paragraph D. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to look at the headings. So most people will first look at the headings, they'll kind of get lost, or they'll read every single word and waste a lot of time. What I want you to do is just focus in on D, and I want you to create a title. So if you had to write a title for this, what would it be? So pause the video, read this, and create your own title, and I'll do the same. So what I'm going to put here for my title is kind of something like a large proportion of world population affected by water problems. So it might not say that in the actual headings. It might be something different, but large, big, proportion, number, population, people are afflicted by these issues. So what I'm going to do that are similar to this. So finance, no. Benefit, no. No. Customers, no. It's not talking about customers. What makes the device different? No. Cleaning water from a range of sources? No. Overcoming production difficulties? No. Profit, not the primary goal? No. A warm welcome for the device? No. This is not looking good. The number of people affected by water shortages? None of these match this. This one, 10, at the bottom, is the correct answer. So 17D, we're going to put 10. Let's check the correct answer. As you can see, 17X, correct answer. How easy was that? That took 30 seconds, and you were able to immediately find the correct answer using the strategy that we teach. That's the exact same strategy as is included in the ebook. But even students who download the PDF, learn all of the strategies, some of them still have issues. Well, what we discovered is that The IELTS reading test is not actually a reading test. It's something different. I'll show you what it is here. The title will kind of give it away. The reading test is not a reading test. Why? Well, have a look here. These are real question words and real words in the text from real tests that actually happened. So here in the question, it talked about civil calendar, but in the text about municipal calendar. Months were in equal length, 12 months of 30 days. Divide halves, split the day into 12-hour periods. 2 equal halves of a day, 12-hour periods. You're probably starting to see that the reading test is not just a reading test. It is a vocabulary test. It is a synonyms test. Civil and municipal, equal length, 30 days within a month. These are all synonyms or paraphrasing. If you do not understand the meaning of these words, you will not be able to find the correct answer. Therefore, what we do is we help our students improve their vocabulary. And the beauty of this strategy is if you improve your vocabulary, you improve not just your reading score, but your listening score and your speaking score and your writing score all at the same time. Because vocabulary is one of those foundation systems that improves everything. But like everything in the IELTS test, there's a right way and a wrong way to improve your vocabulary. The wrong way to improve your vocabulary is to do things like this. Memorizing word lists, they just go in one ear and out the other. Using flashcards with no context doesn't really help you remember no context around it because you'll just forget everything quickly, and flashcards and memorizing long lists just leads to demotivation. People can do it for 10 minutes, they can't do it for 10 weeks. So what we discovered was a far more effective way. It's our vocabulary improvement plan. There's scientific research out there that suggests that the maximum number of words that human beings in any language can learn in one day is between about 8 to 12. Once you start going past